Welcome back, everybody. Well, apparently we have some inner city issues today. This bus driver got pulled over because he was driving with insufficient attitude. Oh well. Well, here goes our next repair on the Mountain Goat. It's a starter this time. Wow, that looks sketchy as hell. Don't think I'm going to get under there. Let me reposition it. I wound up just putting a floor jack underneath, lifting the truck, and putting a couple of jack stands under there. Felt a lot better that way. Well, let's get started. First, we need to disconnect the battery. I chose to disconnect the positive cable. Some people choose to disconnect the negative. But either way, it does the trick. It keeps you from shorting stuff out. To keep my computer alive, I put in this little jumper wire. It won't carry enough to cause a issue if you short something out, but at least it'll keep your computer going. Now, the first thing we needed to tend to underneath the car was to disconnect the knock sensor, which is a short cable coming out of the wire harness that goes to the starter. If you don't do this, you'll wind up hanging the weight of the starter on the knock sensor cables and probably damaging them. That's the way they design things nowadays. Next, we need to take off this little heat shroud off the starter. It's 2 little bolts, no big deal. But you will note right next to the starter is that exhaust pipe. And that'll cook your starter without that heat shield there. Next thing, we find these bolts that hold the starter in. We take them out. There's just 2 bolts, an upper and a lower. Once you've removed those, the starter will hang down by the wires. And you'll want to disconnect the small start wire from the solenoid and then disconnect the large battery cable. I suggest not cutting the wires, although it would be more convenient, but you will need them in the future. Once you've disconnected the wires, the starter will come out and you'll be able to do what you want with it. I chose to disassemble this one, and the end cap on the brush side has some brush arcing on it. The bearing looked okay. Here's the shaft on the end of the rotor and the brush plate, and that doesn't look too bad. But looking inside, you see the armature, the commutator is a bit burned. Not a good sign. I saw this hole on the bottom of the starter. Figured, hey, well, they put it there to drain any water or anything that gets in there can fall out. But the new one has this rubber nipple on it. Yeah, I like that, rubber nipple. Anyhow, I'm sure it keeps dirt out. Maybe I just didn't have one on my original starter. Just reverse the process. Put the new starter back in. Don't forget to put on the heat shield. And don't forget to hook up the knock sensor or you'll drive your computer crazy. Rubber nipples. So while I was under the truck, I decided to look around and see if everything looked okay. We've got some parts there and there's some cables over there. And don't forget to check the muffler bearings. You got to have good muffler bearings. And make sure that you don't have oil dripping out of your oil drain. It's nothing more embarrassing than having stuff dripping out in public. While I was doing maintenance on this vehicle, I decided to change the headlight fluid. I put in some high-intensity halogen fluid. Headlights are real bright now. And this thing fell out on the ground. I don't know where the hell it came from. And I got the battery hooked back up. So let's get in and crank her over and see if she starts. Ah, yes, she purrs like a hammy. Well, there's another issue off my checklist. Now we're going to turn our attention to the Manzanita mine. Robert's got it cut back far enough to where we can start draining some of the water. So here he is breaking her water. They got a good flow coming out. He's working that water with that pickaxe. Boy, he really wants that water out. I guess there's a rock or something there. Took issue with it and decided to rip it out. Okay, we're getting some water flow out. Looking good. Actually, it's not looking so good. It's kind of slowing down. Oh, look in the back here. There's more dirt back here than I thought. That little water was just a pond up at the front. Another 100 cubic yards of dirt going back here. Crap. Well, this is all the water that we got out. Very anticlimactic to my expectations. But to prevent it from happening again, we're putting a door on the Manzanita mine. This door that's made out of 2x4s and 2x6s going horizontally. That way if any dirt presses against the door, it will transfer the load onto the 6x6s behind it. And it's 7 feet tall, 5 feet wide, and about 300 pounds. So I got to get some hinges put on that. I got some parts coming in the mail, and then I'll be doing some forge work. Well, that'll about cover it for now. Take care and see ya. Note to self, order some more rubber nipples.